Thank you all, and welcome to the show. This is the first episode of a new talk show that's called Let's Meet the Wooster Group, and I'm your host, Randy Kennedy. We've got a great show for you today. Keep
it moving, Randy.
With three great guests: the director Liz LeCompte, the actor Kate Valk, and Willem Dafoe. I'm gonna just say a couple of words before we get fully rolling here, and you're gonna keep going like this to me, right? Yeah.
We're hopefully going to wrap this up in about 50 minutes and then have a little time for casual conversation. So if you see me going like that, that means that.
Yeah, I timed this. I timed what I'm going to say.
Thank you.
I just wanted, because of where we're sitting today, I just wanted to sort of run through a grounding reminder of this neighborhood and what happened in this neighborhood where the Wooster Group has had its home for 50 years now.
The Performing Garage.
The Performing Garage.
33 Wooster Street.
Right. And because I think, New York City moves so fast and we erase our own history here, I just want to give you a little grounding of where we're sitting right now. Across the street from us, Ornette Coleman had his studio and house, which he called the Art House. Right next door was the restaurant Food, co-founded by Gordon Matta Clark, which was run by artists. Donald Judd's 101 Spring Street, one of the greatest artist buildings in the world, is 2 blocks away, preserved and open to the public right now. And 2 doors away from that, Joan Jonas still lives, a hero to us all. And you can see her walking her dogs on the street if you go outside, probably just right now. The Open Theater, which included Sam Shepard, was just behind us in a loft on Spring Street. And before that, the hugely pioneering The Living Theater was almost founded in a basement on Wooster Street until the cops mistook their plans for a brothel and shut them down. Jonas Mekas and the Anthology Film Archives were a couple blocks away at 80 Wooster in a building that also housed the ontological, hysteric theater of the great and just recently passed Richard Foreman, whose work, Symphony of Rats, just ended its run last night at the Performing Garage. And the Wooster Group, which is the subject of our show today, is one of the most important experimental theater companies, not only in New York, but in the world. And it's one of those rare art collectives that seems never to have left the razor's edge of the avant-garde, that never sits on its laurels, that seems to go out to the edge of the cliff, Liz, that seems to go out to the edge of the cliff with every production. And that kind of dedication to the radically new is really, really rare. And so Kate and I have prepared today, and she asked me to ask her a question that she wouldn't know that I was going to ask her. And so I'm going to ask you this because I think it has some bearing on the performer and director and theater person that you are. Tell me about Ding-a-Ling Taxi.
Yes, I was a telephone.
What was Ding-a-Ling Taxi?
It was a taxi service where you could call and get a taxi. Can you imagine calling and saying, I'm on the corner of West Broadway and Prince, right, and I need a taxi?
Uber before Uber.
And if they had let women be dispatchers, I would probably still be there now. But they didn't let women over the radio waves. I don't know why. I thought maybe it would be too exciting. And so I remained a telephone operator, but it was a lot of fun. It was the garage on Hudson Street that was used. They filmed for the opening of that TV show Taxi. But we had a great time. We used to put the phones on hold, and the cab drivers would come with a 6-pack of beer, and we would have a party. And John Belushi called once, and Lauren Bacall, and it was right when I came to New York at 19, so I got a map of the city in my head from that. And then it paid off big because I used those skills in the Wooster Group shows.
And you told me about the first time that you met Kate and where.
I'm Kate.
Sorry, when you met Liz and what the first time you met Liz.
I haven't met Kate yet, really. I'm waiting.
The first time you met Liz and where she was and what she was doing.
Right.
Do you remember?
Absolutely. I had gone to NYU Experimental Theater Wing for one semester, and a friend of mine was a assisting Liz, and she was complaining. I was at her house, and she had to paste pages of a script into a financial ledger. And she was like, I don't know why she needs this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I'll help. And it just seemed so cool, and I said, well, you think they need more help down there? And she said, well, yeah, come on down. And so I went down to the performing garage, and Liz was sitting outside with Libby Howes. They were sitting right on the sidewalk in front of the performing garage, and Liz was reading the National Enquirer. And so I was like, oh, wow. Maybe you just borrowed Libby's copy to make yourself look one way. But that's what I remember. I remember the National Enquirer was there. But anyway, we did, and when I worked with the group, they were teaching artists at the Experimental Theater Wing. We did use a transcript from a 911 call in a piece that we made with also Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. But anyway, that's another story.
Well, we have three.
Oh, no, wait.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh, can I help out? And she said, what can you do? And I was like, well, I better not say performing. That seemed a little presumptuous. So I said, I can sew. And actually, I was working as a seamstress at the time. And so she said, okay, duplicate this blue gown that Libby had worn in Rumstick Road. And so I did, and that was my first job. Then I made a black lampshade that looked like the red tent, and we were off and running.
All right, that's my question.
And
now we're going to move on to the second founder of the Wooster Group and introduce Willam Dafoe to the stage.
Up. All right. Boom.
So it says here that in addition to your stage work, you've done some work in the movies, but we'd really like to focus today on the stage work.
Sounds good.
And so, Kate, I understand that we have some clips.
Yeah, for me, this really is a great opportunity, this event today, because I'm so interested in our archives, because we're editing our archives to be placed in a library. And I realized that they were only going to take paper. And I thought, what is going to happen to all our beautiful props and costumes? So I started an archive project photographing and collecting stories that go with them. And then I also realized that, they went to Yale, but they don't want your video either. So I thought, oh my God. So we've got a couple of projects animating video and film from our archives. And so I thought today would be a great opportunity to honor the work Willem has done with the group and the decades of work. And so, but to get into your origin story, I thought we would show clips from Point Judith, which is a production that the group made in 1979. It was directed, of course, by Elizabeth LeCompte, and it was composed by the company at the time, which included Spalding Gray. As a matter of fact, it was an epilogue to 3 pieces that were based on his biography and kind of his goodbye, because he exited at the end. But it was Willem, it was the first piece you made with the company.
The first time made.
You started working there before, because when I came down to the garage, you were a carpenter. Or you were, I just remember you sawing wood.
Bad carpenter.
Yeah. But, so this is the first piece that he composed with the company. So I've got 4 short clips from Point Judith, and Willem hasn't seen these. And the first one is a clip from the play that opened Point Judith. It was called Rig, and it was written by writer Jim Straws. And it took place on an oil rig, 3 men and a boy. And, well, let's watch a clip. It's Spalding Gray as the head of the crew. Ron Vauder, come on in. Ron Vauder, this guy. And first, the kid was played by Michael Rivkin, but in this clip, you'll see the young man who played him, Matthew Hansel. So this is the kid's party piece, which they all get a party piece, and this is his. So lights and Jeff, if you will.
KK's a good kid. We were together on a 12-legged periscope out of Liverpool out in the North Sea. We were working the giant tongs together, laying 30-foot sections to the drill string. And she went and burned and sank. Were you there?
No, I never been out of the country.
Never mind. We were all brought back in a lifeboat dinghy. All hands lost save us. That was a low night at the Union Hall. All the widows coming by dressed in black. They sent over a couple of cases and we mourned all night. All night just to comfort the widows. Widows and orphans under their skirts. Hurling out, crying out, their bodies about. All the mates of my mates, all lost at sea. Beating their breasts, begging for it. Hey kid, do your party piece,
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. It's you, must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, and when the valley's hushed and white with snow, it's I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so.
Okay, and I think we can keep the lights out while I introduce this next one. This is another clip from Rig, and this is the culmination of the tension between Willem's character, Bibi Nettleson, and Ron's character, Dan Silver. And notice the provocative language from writer Jim Strauss.
She said, come on, honey, my daddy's got a lot of money. Own the place.
That's how it is with a guy like me. I never learn.
Some guy named Spanner means square balls in Spanish. Got chunks, capiche? She starts yelling, dead meat, don't touch. And I'm beating at her with a rubber snake, animal tracks, bear-baked.
I gave it everything I got, and I get nothing. A guy like me never learns.
Blow that bubble out of your lip and spit piss, Doughboy.
My heart pumps piss for your problems, Nettleson. It's bitch or beef where I come from. Hang him on a string or hang him on a hook if you got the equipment.
Don't push me, Stu. You're reading my tombstone.
Your tombstone? Oh, that's a good one. You know, you're like my old lady used to be. Well, I told her what for. I told her, I ain't eating your smelly meatloaf anymore. You can find some fat dyke to shag your rug. And that finished it, ended it, all right? Cut it off right there.
Yeah, sure did, Stu.
I'll bet you go diving for oyster all you can, don't you, Meddleson, huh? A regular little muff puppy.
Get your fag to scrape your cheese bug fuck.
You mean me, baby?
Yeah, you queer bait.
That's it, Stu. I'm gonna kill him.
Okay, well, actually, Jeff, bring the lights up because I think this might be a good time before we get in. The next clip would be Stu's party piece, but I just wanted to actually ask Willem about what you remember about how that text was developed with Jim Strauss.
I remember him just kind of bringing in pieces. That's all I remember. It's funny to watch this because this was one part of the piece, and this isn't my. I like the language very much. You hear a little bit of it. You know, there was all this kind of rough language, and I think the idea was, you know, there were these different male archetypes, and the idea that they're trapped on this rig. But I watched this, and it looks so square and old-fashioned, you know, compared to some of the things that we were doing. But the language, language was really cool. And
Yeah, so, but maybe this next clip will illuminate more. Because the Stew's party piece is where the piece opens up. It takes place in a runway in front of a curtain, and that opens up and reveals the house that is featured in a lot of Wooster Group productions that Liz designed. She usually does have a house somewhere in the piece. It's traveled through a lot of them. But this I call the house dance, but you'll see in it, because I feel like the piece rig was developed around men together talking and without women around and, you know, playing cards and how rude can you get kind of thing, and that kind of tension. And then each man has a party piece. Yours was singing Peace in the Valley with Elvis. We'll see a picture of that later. And then Stew's party piece was a condensed version of Long Day's Journey into Night, and this incredible dance where you are in it and you're playing Mary Tyrone. So look for Willem in a gown, and then eventually the gown is off and there's a jockstrap. So he's the one in the gown or the jockstrap. So, Jeff. Lights, please. So I mean, I was actually behind the house holding the dog leash and running the fog machine. And I didn't get to see this part for like a year until I got to come out and run the lights. But I always loved that. The first part, rig, is all the men alone. And then it's as if the men have to take the roles, all the roles in Stew's party piece. And then this last clip from Point Judith, before Randy gets back to Willem, is from the film that was the coda that ended the piece. And it's the story of a happy nun family, where the men now are playing nuns. So it was like the men on the oil rig, then they're taking the parts in Long Day's Journey, now they're living an idyllic life as nuns by the sea. This clip is called By the Sea.
That was projected onto the house, correct?
Yeah, and projected onto the house, and also Livy showed it on a screen. So this is By the Sea that Liz made. What's that? Right, and Mary, the character, James Tyrone's wife, in Long Day's Journey, wanted to be a nun, but she chose to marry James Tyrone, the actor, and have a family instead. So I always see it like Long Day's Journey, dysfunctional family, and then the nuns are a happy family. Her dream come true. So this is from By the Sea. Liz made this with filmmaker Ken Copeland. Okay, lights, please. Okay.
Yep.
I thought maybe for the crowd here, it'd be interesting to talk just a little bit about how you found the Performing Garage and what later became the Wooster Group. What was your, and how as an actor, young actor, you were interested in experimental theater?
I grew up in the Midwest, and I was with a small company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And one of the cool things about that company is we had a space, and in the lobby of the space, we had a fantastic. Okay. We had a fantastic small press bookstore, and I was reading about what was going on in New York. And I didn't really have any particular training. I went to school for a little while, but I really headed to Mecca because I felt also I had a friend that was really into the music scene, and he said, "You gotta come out here. Stuff is happening." So I came to New York, and the idea was to pursue conventional acting work because that's all that I knew. I'm a dopey kid from the Midwest, and I just found myself always going downtown and seeing stuff. And then I met this guy, Richard Schechner, and he asked me to be in some of his shows. And then because it was a shared space at that time with Liz and her group of people, and there was some overlap, I would sit in on rehearsals and watch what they were doing. And I thought, this is really what I want to be doing. So, but I was working with Richard, and then one time Spalding basically said, when they were working on Point Judith, which was originally called, curiously enough, Fathers and Sons, he asked me to come and work with them. So I started working with them, and that was it. And when I look at this stuff, it's not nearly, it's fun to see, but it's just a little tiny piece of the pieces. A thing that I do remember that was very distinctive is when we'd go to rehearsal, we would dance for like 2 hours. We'd put on music and we'd dance, and we'd kind of avoid work for a long time. And Liz was always, very, she led everything, but she always worked in kind of mysterious ways. And she can talk about it, but she might work from, the set first, or she'd have these little fragments. And then we'd kind of construct these activities like to work in this piece, we'd have little exercises. Like I remember I cut a lot of wood in a jock strap, and we played wrestling, and I played Bad Baby, and I was in diapers and I had a bottle, and Ronnie played iron balls, and he had an iron, and his big defense was he'd go for your genitals with his. We did these goofy things, but slowly we'd accumulate material, and that was that. What else do you want to know?
Well, Kate, you were telling me that part of the writing of Rig was it was almost Jim Straw's sitting around with all of the guys and sort of recording what you were saying, and then watching that.
I forgot that part, but it is true. But Jim just took a feeling of the personalities, I think, more than anything else, because the language, you couldn't tell it so much from these clips, but it was very elevated, very funny, very dirty, obvious. Yeah. And at the time, it was really, for me, it was really fun, because it felt a little scandalous and a little clever.
When you had already started making movies, and when you left to go make a movie and you weren't at rehearsal, I wasn't there, so I don't know. I just read this, that you, Jim wrote you out. I mean, was kept writing for the other guys, and said that BB had gone to look for his lunch pail, which was like he went to Hollywood to make a movie. And then when he... What? Heaven's Gate? No, not Hollywood. On location, Heaven's Gate. And then... Thank you, Liz. She'll be up here soon.
I think we should get her up here.
We got to get her up here. But then when you came back, you were looking for your lunch pail, and it was flat as a pancake. I loved that, because I had to, as stage manager, I had to flatten that lunch pail.
Listening to that dialogue, it sounds like it reminds me of Clifford Odets and kind of that rat-a-tat-tat of like the sweet smell of success.
Okay.
Well, I was just gonna say, did that have any kind of? It was like 40s movie dialogue in a way that really rapid fire back and forth.
Well, Liz doesn't come from theater. She was a artist, fine arts, studio art history. So she didn't know a lot about theater, literature, dramaturgy. What I recall when I first started working with the group, she was very, very interested in vaudeville and vaudeville timing and the direct address that comes with that. And I feel like that had a lot to do with this style.
Right. I mean, maybe we should now invite Liz up on the stage, since we've been talking about her quite a bit for a while now.
Did she come?
Yes,
Here?
please.
Middle? Yeah. Middle. Where am I supposed to sit?
Right here, between your two great loves.
I'm lucky. I'm very lucky.
Well, my first question is actually about you trained as a painter, and you came to the theater not from the theater, really. And you've talked before about how you're not really a theater person, in that you don't even really like attention except when you need it, when you want it.
I like attention. I just can't deal with it.
Right.
Paradox.
Can you talk a little bit about making Wooster Productions where it was less about a script that actors were embodying and interpreting, and more like creating images and creating movement and creating presence, like a collage? Do you think of it that way?
No.
How do you think of it?
Just got to jump in. She's not from the theater, but she was very interested in the theater in a funny way. She was like someone from the outside looking in, but her sensibility was so colored by other disciplines. She knew nothing about the theater, but she was always, you say, but she was searching for material to work with that usually was from the theater. There were a lot of texts that come from the theater.
Yeah, and also that the performers weren't actors that were cast in the play. The performers were people that you wanted to see. They wanted to be there, and you wanted to watch them, and they provided human material.
Yeah.
So you're making, from my experience of 47 years, you're making it from who the personas are and what they want to do, and where
Yeah.
You can make them happy or push them farther.
Am I don't even know if am I on, I guess. Is this thing on?
Sort of.
Yeah, I think I always worked from, because I didn't come from commercial theater, well, I did see, what is her name? Mary Martin.
Mary Martin as Peter Pan.
Peter Pan. And that made a big influence. That was a big influence for me. Where were we?
About
This is why I don't do this.
about thinking about theater
yeah,
as collage.
Or
not.
And I see that, like you see when if you're working in a studio and you have all these colors, you have all this stuff around. Sometimes it's pictures, sometimes it's chalk, whatever it is, and you just start working with it. And so I always saw the space as like a three-dimensional painting or collage thing. So I think that I look for texts where the people could go into, or they gave me texts where the people, I could put them in and make them say the words from the text, but somehow in the collision between them being just people I knew really well and what what that color was. I knew to put them all together like making a piece of three-dimensional art, piece of art in 3D.
Oh, which I think is a great segue to some production stills of other Wooster Group pieces, which I selected, of course, in honor of Willem, so he's in every picture. So,
can I just say one thing? As I'm hearing you talk, I mean, one thing that you maybe it's obvious, maybe it isn't, but one thing that was very distinctive about the Wooster Group, to me anyway, was, first of all, it was a true company, and we had our own space, and we'd go to work every day. And sometimes we'd even work in the afternoon and show stuff at night, fragments, work in progress. That was very important. It took a long time to make a piece. We'd show it at various points, and later along the line, we'd do that as we were also touring. So there was always a lot going on. But also, very importantly, the actors and the technicians basically had the same function. They were almost interchangeable. And that also, I mean, it sounds kind of cute, Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland making their own theater. But the truth is, very connected to everything we did. Like, I go there even today, and that I haven't been there for like 20 years, and I was there for like 27 years. I look at the ceiling, and I remember when we painted it,
This is the ceiling from our theater.
Yeah.
Just to give a little height.
But, I mean, it was a small company, and not only would we obviously make our own props and all that, we took care of the place. So it had a very different vibe than most theater companies do. And there also wasn't conventional rehearsal all the time. Like sometimes when we'd get stuck, we'd say, okay, movie day, and we'd watch a movie that seemed somehow related, something to get us on to the next point.
Or walk the High Line.
Or walk the High Line. We used to go on hikes.
Before it was the High Line.
When you have to climb up there.
Oops, no.
You could take it.
Thanks.
So now we're going to show some images.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be great. And then I have some other
Where are you
questions.
going? It's too many. You should.
Oh, yeah.
because they're-
Okay.
you're in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just, we can turn the lights out and go through them, and I'll just describe each one. Okay, so this is Willem and his party piece from Point Judith.
Where you're lip syncing with Elvis Presley. This is the beginning of embracing technology.
Okay, next.
And
Oh,
also,
wait. Oh,
Also, that I came to New York. I want to be an actor or something, and I always thought I'd be there, and I'd think, wow, there was an amateur aesthetic, amateur in the true sense that people were doing it for the love of it. There was no career aspiration. It was just kind of for fun, and that kind of frustrated me because I was an ambitious kid, and I wanted to have something else, And also, Liz used to always say, we're a community theater. And I thought, oh, community theater, that sounds like we're not professional. You
Never said that.
would never have said that.
Come here. But, now I love it. It is a community theater. The community just has to be a community of artists and people that are interested in a certain kind of work.
Nice. Okay, next slide, please. This is Willem. It's a double shot. It's mirrored, but this is on the set of Brace Up, which was our production from the early 90s based on Chekhov's Three Sisters. And we had dances. That's Willem 2 times in the middle. I'm over on the end in the black wig. But, of course, the dances were not written in by Chekhov. We wrote them in. But this is one of the dances from Act 2.
Come on, don't you think you should do one of
them? No. Next slide, please. Okay, that's Willem enjoying his role as Andrei Prozorov, the young brother of the three sisters. And unfortunately, we don't see her face, but that's Joan Jonas on your left. I mean, your right. And she was playing the role of Masha. And she was great because Liz had her very mysterious in a big hat behind a screen. And one day Liz asked her, "Joan, what are you thinking about?" And she said, "Nothing." For her role as Masha. Next. And that's Willem. A lot of the acting was distance because the live performers were often at this low back table. And then this is Anna Kohler as Andrei's wife, Natasha. She would be facing literally upstage, but towards a camera. So there were these big, gorgeous close-ups of some of the characters in the scene with people who were live on stage.
Also in this thing, there was one character that was a 90-year-old woman, and she couldn't always travel with us, and she could not be at the performances. So we recorded her part, and we would wheel a television set out, and she'd do her part, and you play the scenes with her image. And I only mention that because
it was Steve Buscemi's grandmother.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi's grandma. And of course, Liz can talk about this more deeply, but I mean, I always remember that because our solutions, sometimes technically, were not always aesthetic. They were practical. And that was one rooted in practicality. She couldn't be there. So how do we get her? We tape her. And she's still there in spirit. This information, the lines are there, her image is there, and we'll do it that way. And that, of course, creates a different texture, and that's the opening up of kind of playing with technology, just not in an illusionistic way, but in a way that helps you, not tell a story, but, do the text and make these characters and make these things.
Next, please. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, now this is Willem, Peyton Smith on the floor, Michael Kirby on a monitor because he couldn't tour with us all the time, and Jeff Webster on guitar. And this is from our show from 1986, LSD, ... just the high points, ... And this, where we did a version of The Crucible, and this is The Crucible on Acid, where we had been performing excerpts of Miller's The Crucible at night, and then one rehearsal, we planned it. Liz said, "You guys are going to take LSD, and I'm going to record you doing The Crucible." And then we recreated that every night, and she layered other stories on top of it. But it was the most organized chaos. People are like, "How did you do that?" Oh, it was so exact, but it looked like total chaos.
But to give you an idea, and that was really I saw a Symphony of Rats recently, and I've been away from the group for a long time. But what's really impressive is how meticulous everything is, the execution of everything. And I think that there was plenty of that before, but that was a good example of, we made a score, like homework, we took second by second, and you'd write what you were doing second by second. So as you were recreating this, you had to catalog your acid trip. Mm-hmm. And the way you do it was often in relationship to, I shift my right buttock when Kate touches her hair. I go down and touch my toe when I hear that sound. It was very meticulous. And that was one of the first times of doing that kind of work, that kind of recreation thing, very meticulously, but giving the illusion of, a kind of disorder.
Yeah. Next. Just in case you're wondering, Willem played John Proctor from The Crucible. And actually in the Crucible on Acid, you are kind of the one that is really trying to keep the play going. You're trying to keep it together. That I love that look on your face.
It's like, what the fuck?
Next slide. And this is Willem in The Hairy Ape. And
not the top one.
Oh,
That's you, the Hairy Ape.
Oh, yeah, that's me in the gorilla head. This is where Willem's character Yank, Eugene O'Neill's The Hairy Ape, it's the final scene where everyone's been calling him a hairy ape, and so he finally goes to confront a real ape at the zoo and is strangled.
One thing interesting about The Hairy Ape is it's a short play by Eugene O'Neill. Normally, when they do it traditionally, the production takes about 3.5 hours because there's all these big sets and big changes. Oh. And Liz said, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to do one set, and we're going to change it around, and you're going to perform it as fast as you can. And it's basically a rant. It's like there are lots of other parts, but it's basically a monologue, a rant. And the interesting thing is, I didn't think it was a very good play, but I thought we'll do something with it. But when she forced me to do the text very quick, it's very repetitive, and I recognized what a genius Eugene O'Neill was, because in the speed, I found the rhythm that he had written into it that was so beautiful that if you space it out, I'm not sure it hangs together. But done fast, it had a music to it that was incredible.
Important that Liz set the whole text to music by John Lurie. John Lurie, he didn't write the music in particular for this play, but he gave you all that music, and she scored every scene too. It's a beautiful score.
But I like the idea that having to do it fast unlocked a rhythm that I could see done in a traditional way. And then for me, it became this beautiful, poem.
Next slide. This is another scene from The Hairy Ape. And this is after you've gotten beaten by the policeman because people don't appreciate you on Fifth Avenue. And I just want to point out, the boxing wraps, the yellow wraps on his hand, he had a mic like this, and it was actually taped to his hand. So the mic was always in his hand.
And also in the nice thing about working in a company, you accumulate language, you accumulate props, and a lot of this stuff comes from other places and gets recycled. You can't really see it here, but I had the most beautiful costume because it had all these layers. And
and you were wearing
hockey pants and a shooting stick, and there were all these things to deal with. Yeah, I was going to tell the story about how...
Don't tell the story.
No, it's a terrible story. Because I screamed a lot in it. I also got very hot, and I had to take off makeup and all this kind of stuff during it. It was a demanding thing. And I used to drink a lot of water, so I wouldn't rip out my throat. And I was in there for a long time, and I had many, 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 many layers of clothing to make me look big hockey pants, all these. And there was more than one occasion where I'd be doing this monologue, screaming away, and I'd be urinating in my pants.
And you were right. That was a horrible story.
No, I tell it because that was such a pleasure. Because I had a secret. I had a secret, but I was, still doing, it was like this.
Next slide, please. This is a poster from The Hairy Ape.
And that's Kate.
No, that's me and his eyeballs. I played Mildred Douglas, the woman who is revulsed by him in the bowels of the steamship as he's shoveling coal. Next slide. And I think this is our last slide, but this is from To You the Birdie, which is the production based on Racine's Phaedra. That writer Paul Schmidt, who actually played the Doctor in Brace Up, and it was he's a famous translator of Chekhov, but he had done, he had taken the Racine out of the rhyming couplets and put it into very, soap opera language. And so this is Willem as Theseus, and that's Clotilde Huang and Dominique Bousquet, his attendants. He was the king.
No.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Lights, please.
Good show. Good show.
I was gonna ask,
Liz. Get up.
Liz, yeah.
She doesn't love this.
That it's maybe worth pointing out that you continued to perform with the Wooster Group up to, I think it was 2005, if I remember correctly.
A little earlier.
But he's performing with us today.
Right.
Again.
Exactly. Yeah.
2003.
And I would be happy to return, but it takes so long to make a piece.
Yeah.
And that was, when I started making movies, that was one of the challenges. And we done lots of different things. But it was hard to go away and do a movie because it would take me out of the process. So there were two options. Either I would be in the piece or I'd have a small piece, a small part. And then, which was frustrating for me. It wasn't, sometimes it was frustrating for the company. Most of all, when they felt like they couldn't. Everybody has to be in the room to make the piece. So when I go away, it really, it wasn't a calculated thing because...
What he's trying to say is we had to fire him.
They didn't fire me. If you want to play rough, I fired you, okay?
Oh, God. Yeah, but he had to pay.
What do you think you
What a mistake.
Oh, sorry. Oh, do I really?
What are the most important things that you think you carry from the Wooster Group into film acting or more traditional theater acting? Like what pieces?
The short answer is, acting is about doing things. It's about committing to an action. Also, great love for the event, as opposed to traditional psychology or telling a story. I always thank Richard Foreman for reminding me, stories hide the truth. Everybody's obsessed with telling their story. I think cinema and also theater can do more than that. You listen to a story, you hop on a train, you recognize certain things, and yes, you have an experience of empathy, but you don't get challenged in a proper way.
But proper is the problem.
Proper, well, for me, I'm speaking for me, not proper like in jail. You're right. You're right. I should say proper, but I mean, for me, it's not as satisfying because the beautiful thing is when there's a mystery, there's a curiosity, there's a confrontation. Always, if you hit something pleasant, it's pleasant, but it doesn't run very deep. You forget it immediately, and doesn't advance the art, doesn't challenge you. I don't know. Maybe I'm, a striver. I don't know, but that's important.
Yeah.
The other thing, this thing about technicians and actors being equal, and also this thing of, when we started out, everybody's identity was not about being an actor. It's very important for an actor not to have an actor's identity. The joke is actors tend to be narcissistic and self-involved, but, you got to lose that. You got to give yourself over to something. And I think by sheer, sometimes tediousness of the rehearsal and the sheer mystery of where we're going, and this woman is, crazed. She really, no, it's, when you hop on board with her, you're going to a place that really, it's tough. So those things. I mean, push me on it, but
Nicely said.
What?
Nicely said. Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
There was I read this interview about the group with you and Baum, Willem, and you were saying
very long time.
Yeah, but there's this part where you said it's a different kind of theater than people writing plays for actors to perform. Plays are literature. You tell the audience something. That's what playwriting is often about. I don't think we do that. I don't think we tell people things. We do things.
Yeah.
We do things.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's
And
true.
and
I feel that about movies. I do. It's about doing things and surrendering to the action, surrendering to the world, and then having something happen to you that's transparent enough that people, may experience it with you, and you're not telling them what you're experiencing. You're trying to be affected in front of them. You're like a guinea pig, and they can be with you if you're doing it in the right spirit. If it's not for you, if it's not coming from a place of a didactic place of I want to tell you who this person is, or I think this is what needs to happen, this is what's wrong with the world, or any of that. It's more about a dancer, around the campfire. So.
And do you, in film work, do you have peers that you work with who have the depth of training in experimental theater that you have? Do you come across people very often?
No.
Yeah.
No, really.
Even in Europe?
They aren't really compatible. I mean, I was very lucky, not only to be working with the Wooster Group for so long. There aren't many companies like the Wooster Group. I can't think of one, really. Really, I can't. That has that kind of longevity and was a true company, worked every day, and didn't do conventional plays, and wasn't just a company doing plays for actors or directors to be interpreters. It's something else. It's closer to the art world. It's closer to performance. It's closer to dance.
Like a
Right.
band.
Huh?
Well,
Or like a band. Yeah.
this is actually something else you said in that Baum interview that's actually more of a thing for Liz, but about the relationship of the group to the critical apparatus and the rest of the theater world in New York.
When
you
was
said,
this written?
This was I don't remember, maybe in the 80s, right? But he said, this is what you...
I have to listen to what I said.
No, this is what he said.
Oh, good. Okay.
But it has bearing on you. You said, sometimes I think we should be reviewed by art critics or dance critics instead of theater critics because of the way we work. It's true that we work with a painter's or a choreographer's sensibility. And that, I guess you've already talked about this a little bit, but do you think of yourself that way more as a choreographer?
I'm a very good dancer.
Right. Well, wait, Kate was telling me you trained with wrestlers at some point, right? For the house dance in Rumstick Road.
Boxing.
One thing that we did, and I think we still do, for each project we get a discipline. Like for To You, the Birdie, it was badminton. Mm-hmm. We learned something, and that becomes the activity not only to bring us together, but also to find certain dynamics, and it becomes an active thing that it gets, injected into.
Well, it brings with it all the world of the equipment of the particular sport.
We worked with square dancing.
Yeah.
For one show, there's this thing called the Learning Annex. Remember that?
Yes.
And under pseudonyms, we all pretended we didn't know each other, and we went to a stand-up class.
Oh, no, half of us went to stand-up, and I went to the singing experience.
Yeah. But we did
With
things
Nancy
like that,
Riley.
where we do these.
You found the catalog.
remember?
You were like, you came into rehearsal.
Well, there are those kiosks, those yellow kiosks on the
And Liz
street.
was interested
We
in
do field trips.
failure in stand-up, or the failure, like Nancy and I couldn't sing. So it was a lot about failure, and like really funny things happened with that. But I also wanted to say the thing about picking like badminton for To the Birdie, or basketball for Vieux Carré, or whatever, ping pong we did. I always felt like it was you wanting something kinetic to happen in the room with the performers, so you had time to think.
Exactly.
So you could not have to figure out what the play means and tell us what to do. Because I think the biggest difference between how you work and how maybe more traditional theater directors, and it's a lot of people don't know this because they just know one way, is that you do not approach the text to interpret it, to say, you don't sit down and say, what does Tennessee Williams Vieux Carré, what's going on in this play, what is it?
Or what does it mean?
What does it mean? Blah, 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 blah. Because I feel like that closes off meaning for you, and you want to keep learning about the text. And
it's almost like you're trying to discover where that impulse comes to, those words. Why does this exist?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I was always struck by, I get with them now and see them very often, and how much we avoided getting to work. Because it was hard work. And in the avoidance is usually where we did the greatest work.
Yeah.
And whether it was the dancing
and
or
accident tapes.
What?
Accidents.
We did crazy stuff.
Yeah.
No, but every day at rehearsal, we have a rehearsal camera, so everything, we record the whole day in case something terrific happens. Because tapes. Liz used to say before we had the rehearsal camera, something would happen and she would be like, oh, do that again, and we couldn't do it. Yeah. And so we didn't ever want to be in a situation where we would hear, oh, you guys could never do that again. Because now we have that bit of tape that we literally put into the actor monitors that we use, so we are oftentimes copying what happened in an accident.
Or watching it and remembering what impulse made you do that.
Yeah.
So it's not a psychological thing, it's a whole body, whole mind thing.
Yeah.
That happens.
Something else, I don't know if this is important, but I'm impressed by it, and I know because I get distance from it. You know, I don't know a company where the director, there's very few, where the director is always present. And even when we're on tour, we're rehearsing.
Yeah.
You put in the show, there's lots of technical requirements, and okay, you iron those out. But sometimes we're working right before the public comes in.
Yeah.
The shows keep on getting worked. You know, they may not change in structure, but certain
it keeps
things
them
will
alive.
Get,
But it's also, because I sit in the audience, it's a sense of I'm watching with the audience every night. So there's this feeling about, oh, what are they looking for? And what do I want to satisfy? And what do I not care about satisfying? So always that question that I have to go through.
Willem, if there was one production that you were part of that you had time to do again, what would that one be? If you could choose one.
Oh, Route 1 and 9, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
But it's impossible.
Yeah.
Or Harry 8 would be cool,
Yeah.
because that was so hung on me, and you know, it's not just about being at the center of things, but when you are at the center and you have a lot to do, you can't think. It's all doing. So that was a very tough show, but very rewarding because I had no rest. I had no rest. Once you started, you went through until it was done. So you really had an experience every night, and it was so challenging that you were always riding the wave because there was no rest.
Right.
Because you were driving it, and seldom do you have a performance where for an hour.
But do you
10 minutes you've got to drive.
Do you miss that? I mean, because in all the shows that I was in with you, they were so physical. Like we didn't feel right unless we were drenched in sweat at the end of the show. Do you miss that in the movies?
In the movies, well, I do some pretty physical stuff in movies, but of course I miss it. But I always try to seek out movies that, where I have to do something physical. Because, like I say, it's all in action. And once you're in movement, then, you lose a kind of critical mind and you're in it. It's much easier to be pure in your intention, when you don't have moments of reflection when you're concentrated on doing things like an athlete. You know, an athlete running a 100-yard dash wants to get from here to there. Sounds very simple. A lot goes on from here to there, but probably very little happens that sits outside of the task that they're doing. Mm-hmm. So when you got your plate full, it really focuses you in a way that there's nothing extra. There's nothing for you. You're just you're an instrument of stuff that's even weirdly beyond your control. Then you engage the body. When you think about the body and you think of all the millions of things that happen without your permission, without your volition, if you can somehow tap into that, that's a miracle. And that's why it's amazing to sometimes tap into that groove, because you have a velocity, you have a concentration, you have an energy that's beyond you. I mean, you think about millions of, just seeing you now, the millions of functions in my eye. I have nothing to do with it. So if you let it happen, sometimes beautiful things can happen. That's the idea.
And is there any film that you've been involved with where the process ever approached a kind of improvisational Wooster Group kind of vibe?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's theater film is different.
Yeah.
Capture, conjure, film capture, theater conjure, because usually you have some sort of score and then you have to reanimate it every night, and that's the beauty of it. But as far as, like, I've worked on some films, for example, they're usually smaller films, they're usually messier films. Like, I did a film with Abel Ferrara that's totally improvised called Tommaso, and he would just whisper something in my ear. He'd tell me a story, and then we'd do it,
Would the story have anything to do with what you had to do? Or would it be like
No, he'd say, this is what happened. And then I'd be basically him. I'd be his I'd be doing his doing. And that was rooted because all the details, all the world were actual. I was playing with his wife, I was playing with his daughter, I was playing in the places I knew, his house, the streets I know, that sort of thing. So there's some similarity there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.